Jake Martinez wiped down the counter for the third time that evening. The coffee shop was empty again. It had been empty most of the day. He looked around at the tables and chairs he had arranged so carefully 2 years ago when he first opened Corner Brew on Meridian Point Station. Back then, he thought running a coffee shop in space would be exciting. He imagined meeting travelers from across the galaxy and sharing stories over warm drinks. The reality was different. Most aliens who passed by his shop barely looked inside. Some stopped to read the menu, wrinkled their noses or equivalent features, and walked away. Coffee was a human thing. Most species in the galaxy had never heard of it before humans arrived. Even when Jake offered free samples, most aliens politely declined. They had their own drinks and their own gathering places. The station was busy outside. Through the wide window, Jake could see hundreds of beings moving through the corridors. There were tall blue Ventaxians with their 4 arms. Small, furry Prixians scurried past in groups. Giant insectoid Thrax clicked their way toward the docking bays. Meridian Point was a major trade hub. Thousands of aliens lived and worked here. But none of them seemed to need what Jake offered. Jake checked the time. It was late evening by station standards. He would close soon. Maybe tomorrow would be better. He told himself that every night. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Jake looked up and froze. A dragon stood in the doorway. At least, that was the only word Jake could think of to describe the creature. It was massive, nearly 7 feet tall, with deep purple scales that seemed to shimmer in the light. 2 large wings were folded tightly against its back. Golden eyes stared at Jake from a long reptilian face. Sharp teeth were visible, even with the mouth closed. The dragon moved slowly into the shop. Its tail dragged behind it, scraping slightly on the floor. Everything about the creature spoke of power and strength. But something was wrong. The dragon's shoulders slumped. Its wings hung loose. The golden eyes looked tired. Jake had learned not to judge aliens by their appearance. He straightened up and smiled. "Welcome to Corner Brew. Please, sit anywhere you like." The dragon seemed surprised to be greeted. It looked around the empty shop and then moved to the corner booth by the window. It settled onto the seat with a heavy sigh. The booth creaked under its weight but held. The dragon stared out at the stars visible through the viewport. Jake grabbed a menu and walked over. Up close, the dragon was even more impressive. Each scale looked perfect. The claws were long and sharp, but the eyes still looked sad. "First time here?" Jake asked. The dragon turned its massive head. "Yes, I have traveled past this station many times but never stopped." The voice was deep and smooth. It spoke perfect English, though with an accent Jake could not place. "Well, I'm glad you decided to stop today. My name is Jake. I run this place." He held out his hand. The dragon looked at the offered hand for a moment, then carefully extended one clawed hand. The handshake was gentle despite the obvious strength. "You may call me Vex. I am a cargo hauler. I transport goods between systems." Jake nodded. "That must keep you busy. What can I get you? Coffee? Tea? Hot chocolate? I also have some pastries if you're hungry." Vex looked down at the table. "I appreciate the offer, but I find myself without credits at the moment. A miscalculation on my part. I will leave if you wish." "Hey, no way." Jake waved his hand. "Everyone deserves a warm drink and a place to sit. First one is on the house. What sounds good?" The dragon's eyes widened. "You would do this? We have only just met." "That's kind of the point of a coffee shop," Jake said. "It's a place where people can relax and talk. Where I come from on Earth, coffee shops are about community, about taking a break from the hard stuff and just being human for a while." He paused. "Well, being whatever species you are, I guess." Vex stared at him. "This is a human custom? One of our better ones, I think. So what will it be?" "I make a great coffee. Nice and strong. Smooth finish. Or if you prefer something sweeter, the hot chocolate is popular." "Coffee," Vex said slowly. "I will try this human drink." Jake grinned. You got it. I'll make you something special. He went back to the counter and started preparing the coffee. He used his best beans and took extra care with the temperature and timing. If this was Vex's first coffee, it had to be good. A few minutes later, he brought over a steaming mug and a plate with 2 cookies. Here you go. Fair warning, it might be hot for you. Different species have different tolerance levels. Vex took the mug carefully in both hands. He sniffed it first, then took a small sip. His eyes closed. This is wonderful. Rich and complex. And the warmth is perfect. Jake sat down across from him. Mind if I join you? Not much else happening tonight. Please. Vex gestured to the seat. They sat in silence for a moment. Vex drank the coffee slowly, savoring each sip. You seem tired, Jake said. Long trip? Very long. And lonely. Vex looked out at the stars again. Space is vast. Sometimes it feels too vast. You can be surrounded by millions of beings and still feel completely alone. Jake nodded. I know exactly what you mean. I came out here looking for adventure. Thought it would be exciting to live among the stars and meet aliens from across the galaxy. But most days, I just feel far from home. Yet you show kindness to a stranger, Vex said, even one who cannot pay. Especially then, Jake replied. Look, I don't know what you're hauling or where you're going. I don't know anything about you really. But I know what it's like to feel alone in a crowd. If I can make someone's day a little better with a cup of coffee and a friendly chat, that seems worth doing. Vex turned to face him fully. Your species is new to the galactic community. Only a few decades since first contact. Yet you speak with such certainty about how to treat others. It's not complicated, Jake said. Treat people the way you want to be treated. Be kind when you can. Listen when someone needs to talk. These aren't human ideas. They're just good ideas. Perhaps, Vex said. But I have traveled for many years and visited countless worlds. I have met thousands of species. Few would offer a free drink to a stranger. Fewer still would sit and talk without wanting something in return. Jake shrugged. Then maybe they're missing out. Some of my best conversations on Earth happened with people I just met. Sometimes a stranger is exactly what you need. They don't know your history or your problems. They just see you as you are right now. Vex was quiet for a long time. He finished his coffee and tried one of the cookies. Finally, he spoke. May I return here? When I pass through the station again? Of course, Jake said immediately. Anytime. I'm here most days. And hey, next time you can pay if you want. But if you're short on credits, don't let that stop you. You have given me more than coffee tonight, Vex said. He stood up slowly. You have reminded me of something I had forgotten. Thank you, Jake Martinez. 4. Just Jake is fine. Safe travels, Vex. The dragon moved toward the door, then paused. I will return. This, I promise. After Vex left, Jake cleaned the mug and plate. He felt better than he had in months. Maybe he had not made much money today. Maybe the shop was still struggling. But he had made a connection. He had helped someone feel a little less alone. Outside in the corridor, Vex walked slowly back toward the docking bay. His ship was waiting in berth 7. The crew would be concerned about his delay. Commander Zex would have questions. As he entered the ship, his advisor approached immediately. Your Majesty, you were gone longer than planned. Is everything secure? Vex removed the small device from his belt. His disguise field deactivated. The simple appearance of a cargo hauler faded. His scales now showed intricate patterns that marked him as royalty. A crown that had been hidden became visible. Everything is more than secure, Commander, Emperor Vexthor said. I have found something unexpected, something valuable beyond measure. What did you find, Your Majesty? The Emperor looked back toward the station, toward a small coffee shop where a lonely human worked late into the night. I found a friend. 3 days passed before Vex returned. Jake was serving a group of Prixians when the door opened, and the purple dragon walked in. Jake's face lit up with genuine happiness. "Vex, good to see you again. Give me just a minute." Vex nodded and moved to the same corner booth. He watched Jake work with the small furry aliens. Jake was patient and friendly, explaining each drink option clearly. The Prexians left with their orders and seemed pleased. Jake came over with a fresh pot of coffee and 2 mugs. "Mind if I join you again?" "Business is slow, as usual. I would enjoy the company." Vex pulled out a credit chip. "And I can pay today." Great, but let's settle up when you leave. For now, let's just enjoy the coffee." They fell into easy conversation. Vex asked about Earth and what it was like. Jake told him about oceans and mountains, about cities and small towns. He described seasons and weather, things that many space stations lacked. "Humans seem very connected to their home planet," Vex observed. "We are," Jake agreed. "Even out here, I miss Earth sometimes. The real sky, real rain, the smell of grass after a storm." He paused. "What about you? Where is home for you?" Vex was quiet for a moment. "I have not been home in a very long time. My work keeps me traveling constantly. Sometimes I forget what home feels like." "That sounds hard." "It is necessary," Vex said. "But yes, it is hard." Over the following weeks, Vex became a regular visitor. He came every few days, always in the evening, when the shop was quiet. Jake learned to have his favorite coffee ready. He also introduced Vex to pastries. The dragon particularly liked the chocolate croissants. They talked about everything. Jake shared stories about growing up on Earth, about his family and friends, about why he decided to leave and try something new. Vex listened carefully to every word. In return, Vex talked about his travels across the galaxy. He described worlds Jake had only seen in pictures. Beautiful crystal cities on frozen moons, ancient forests that grew in the dark, ocean planets where entire civilizations lived underwater. "You have seen so much," Jake said one evening. "It must be amazing." "It is," Vex agreed. "But seeing something and experiencing it are different. I visit these places, but rarely stay long enough to truly know them. Always moving to the next destination, always focused on the task ahead. Sounds lonely." "It is exactly that." Jake refilled their mugs. "You know, you never really talk about your cargo hauling work. What do you transport?" Vex looked uncomfortable. "Many things. Important things. It is complicated and often boring to discuss." "Fair enough. We all have parts of our jobs we don't want to talk about." Jake grinned. "Like cleaning the coffee machines." "Nobody wants to hear about that." Vex relaxed. "Thank you for not pressing." "Everyone has secrets, Vex. I'm not going to pry. I'm just happy you keep coming back." As the weeks passed, Jake noticed changes in his shop. More aliens were stopping in. Some asked if this was the place where the dragon came. Word was spreading somehow. Business slowly improved. More importantly, Jake felt happier. He looked forward to Vex's visits. It was nice to have a friend, even an alien one. One evening, Jake brought out a small package. "I got you something." "Hope you don't mind." Vex carefully opened it. Inside was a mug with a picture of Earth on it. "This is beautiful. Now you have your own mug. Keep it here. That way when you visit, you always have something familiar waiting." Vex held the mug carefully. His golden eyes seemed to shine brighter. "This is very thoughtful. No one has given me a personal gift in years." "Really, that's sad. Everyone deserves birthday presents and random gifts from friends. I suppose my life does not allow for such things often." Jake frowned. "What kind of cargo hauling doesn't allow time for gifts?" "You should find a better job, Vex. One that lets you live a little." Vex laughed, a deep rumbling sound. If only it were that simple. One particularly quiet night, Jake asked the question that had been on his mind. "Why do you keep coming here, Vex?" "I mean, I'm glad you do. But there are fancier places on the station, places that cater specifically to different species." Vex thought carefully before answering. You asked me once what home feels like. I had forgotten. But when I am here, in this small shop with its warm drinks and kind owner, I remember. You do not want anything from me except conversation. You do not judge me or have expectations. Here, I am simply Vex. Not a position or a title. Just myself. Well, that's all any of us really are in the end, Jake said. Just ourselves. Everything else is just stuff we do or roles we play. You make it sound simple. It should be simple. We complicate it. Vex smiled, showing his sharp teeth. Humans have an interesting way of seeing the world. Your species is so young in galactic terms, yet you speak with such clarity about life. Maybe that's because we're new, Jake suggested. We haven't had thousands of years to make everything complicated. We're still figuring things out. During another visit, Vex brought Jake a gift. It was a small crystal that glowed with a soft blue light. This is from a moon in the Andara system, Vex explained. It absorbs starlight and releases it slowly. I thought you might like it for your shop. Jake was touched. This is incredible. Thank you. He placed it on the counter where it cast gentle blue light across the room. Now everyone who comes in will see it. You share gifts freely, Vex observed. Most beings would keep such a thing for themselves. Beauty should be shared. What's the point of having something nice if nobody else gets to enjoy it? Vex watched Jake arrange the crystal carefully. You truly believe that? Of course. Look, I know the galaxy is a big place, with lots of different cultures and beliefs. But some things should be universal, right? Kindness, generosity, treating others with respect. These shouldn't be human ideas. They should be everyone's ideas. In theory, yes. In practice, the galaxy operates very differently. Power matters. Status matters. What you can offer matters. Then maybe the galaxy needs to change, Jake said simply. Vex stared at him. You say this with such confidence. As if changing the entire galactic culture is possible. Why not? Everything changes eventually. Someone just has to start. Over their many conversations, Jake learned more about Vex's personality. The dragon was intelligent and thoughtful. He asked good questions and really listened to the answers. But there was always a sadness in him. A weight he carried. You seem tired, Jake said one evening. More than usual. I have many responsibilities, Vex admitted. Sometimes they feel overwhelming. Like I am carrying more than I can bear. Want to talk about it? I cannot. Not fully, but I appreciate that you ask. Vex sipped his coffee. You have responsibilities too. This shop. Your life here. Yet you do not seem burdened. I guess I learned to let go of things I can't control. I run my shop the best I can. I treat people well. Beyond that, what happens happens. I can't carry the weight of the whole galaxy. What if you could? Vex asked quietly. What if the galaxy was your responsibility? Jake laughed. Then, I'd be in serious trouble. Nobody should have that much power. It would be too much for any one person. Or any one dragon. I guess. Vex did not laugh. Sometimes, such power is inherited. Not chosen. Even then, nobody should carry it alone. Everyone needs help. Everyone needs someone they can talk to without the weight of all those responsibilities between them. Is that what we have? Vex asked. A friendship without weight? I hope so, Jake said. I mean, you're my friend, Vex. I don't care what you haul or where you go. I care that you're here right now, drinking coffee and talking with me. Vex was quiet for a long moment. I have advisors and staff. I have beings who work for me and with me. But I do not have friends. Not real ones. Not like this. Well, you do now, Jake said firmly. And friends show up for each other. So whenever you're at this station, you have a place to go and someone who's happy to see you. As Vex prepared to leave that night, he paused at the door. Jake, if you knew who I truly was, would it change things between us? Jake thought about it. I don't know. Maybe at first, I'd be surprised. But I think after that, it wouldn't matter much. You're still you, regardless of what else you might be. Why? Is there something you need to tell me? Not yet, Vex said. But perhaps someday. Whenever you're ready, I'll still be here, making coffee and being your friend. After Vex left, Jake cleaned up and prepared to close. He looked at the glowing crystal on the counter and smiled. His little coffee shop had become something more than just a business. It had become a place where a lonely human and a lonely dragon could find friendship. What Jake did not know was that outside the shop, beings noticed whenever Vex visited. Station security gave Corner Brew special attention. Other aliens showed unusual respect when passing by during Vex's visits. Commander Zex continued to worry. The Emperor was spending too much time with this human. It was unusual. It was unprecedented. But when he tried to discuss it, Emperor Vex Thor would not hear arguments. I will continue my visits, the Emperor said firmly. This human asks nothing of me except my time and my honesty. Do you know how rare that is? Do you understand what that means? The commander did not, but he could see the change in his Emperor. Vex Thor seemed lighter somehow, less burdened. The Emperor smiled more after his visits to the coffee shop. Perhaps, the commander thought, there was value in this strange friendship after all. The crisis began on a quiet morning. Jake was preparing for the day when the station's alert system activated. A calm voice announced that all civilians should remain in their current locations. No explanation was given. Jake turned on the news feed. His stomach dropped as he read the headlines. Ships from the Krylon Confederation had arrived at Meridian Point. They surrounded the station with weapons ready. The Krylon were demanding that the station hand over a group of refugees who had fled Krylon territory. The news showed images of the Krylon ambassador. He was a tall insectoid, being with a harsh voice. He gave the station 12 hours to comply or face military action. Jake watched the feed with growing concern. He knew about the refugees. Everyone on the station knew. They were families fleeing persecution in Krylon space. Women and children mostly. They had committed no crimes except disagreeing with their government. The station administrator appeared on screen. Kyle Foster looked nervous and unprepared. He stammered through a statement saying he was considering all options and urged calm. Jake felt anger rise in him. Foster was going to give them up. He could see it in the man's eyes. Foster was more worried about the station than about doing what was right. Hours passed slowly. Jake kept the shop open even though few customers came. Everyone was glued to news feeds or locked in their homes. The station felt like it was holding its breath. Late in the afternoon, Jake received a message. It was from one of the Prixians he had served weeks ago. The message was simple. The refugees are hiding in Section 7, near the storage areas. They need help. Please. Jake did not hesitate. He closed the shop and grabbed supplies. Water, food, blankets, anything he could carry. He made his way through the quiet corridors to Section 7. He found them in an old cargo bay that was no longer in use. 20 beings. Maybe more. Families huddled together. Children crying softly. Adults trying to look brave for the little ones. I brought supplies, Jake said. It's not much, but it might help. An elderly alien woman approached him. She had gray skin and kind eyes. You are human. Why do you help us? Because it's the right thing to do. Because nobody should be handed over to people who want to hurt them. You risk yourself for strangers. You're not strangers anymore, Jake said simply. You're people who need help. That's all that matters. He spent hours with them, distributing supplies and trying to keep spirits up. The children were scared. Jake told them stories about Earth to distract them, about places where nobody had to hide or run. As evening approached, Jake returned to his shop. He had to think. There had to be a way to help more. Maybe he could hide some of them in his storage room. It was not much, but every person saved mattered. The shop door opened. Vex walked in, looking troubled. Vex, Jake felt relief. I'm so glad you're here. This situation with the Krylon is getting worse. I know, Vex said quietly. He moved to his usual booth but did not sit. Jake, I need to tell you something. I need to tell you something. Can it wait? I need to figure out how to help those refugees. Foster is going to give them up. I know it. And I can't let that happen. You plan to help them? Vex asked. Of course. I was thinking I could hide some in my storage room. It's not great. But it's something. Maybe we could move them in small groups to different parts of the station. Make it harder for the Krylon to find them all. That is dangerous. The Krylon will search the entire station if they must. Then we make it difficult for them. We stand up and say, no. Jake paced back and forth. I know I'm just one person. I know I can't fight warships or change politics. But I can help, even if it's just a few people. Even if all I do is give them a safe place for a little while longer. Vex watched him with those golden eyes. Why do you care so much? These beings are not human. They are not your people. They're people. Period. That's enough. Jake stopped pacing and looked at his friend. Look. I know the galaxy is complicated. I know there are politics and treaties and all kinds of things I don't understand. But at the end of the day, this is simple. There are children out there who are scared. There are families who just want to live in peace. If I can help them and I don't, then what kind of person am I? You could be hurt. You could be arrested. Then I'll deal with that when it happens. Some things are worth the risk. Vex was silent for a long time. Something seemed to be fighting inside him. Finally, he spoke. You truly believe this? You would risk everything? Yes, Jake said without hesitation. I would. I will. Even knowing you cannot win? That one human with a coffee shop cannot stop a military force? Winning isn't the point. Trying is the point. Standing up is the point. Jake sat down across from Vex. I'm sorry. I know you came here to relax and escape from your cargo hauling stress. Instead, I'm dumping all this on you. No, Vex said. Do not apologize. You have reminded me of something crucial. Something I had forgotten. What's that? What true courage looks like. What real leadership means. Vex stood up. His entire posture changed. He seemed taller somehow, more powerful. Jake, I have not been honest with you. Dust? What do you mean? I am not a cargo hauler. I never was. Vex reached to his belt and pressed something. The air around him shimmered. Jake watched in shock as Vex's appearance changed. The scales that had seemed simple now showed intricate patterns. Gold and silver lines formed complex designs across the purple scales. A crown appeared on his head, made of the same material as his scales but shaped into sharp points. His eyes seemed to glow brighter. Most shocking was the symbol that appeared on his chest. Jake recognized it from news feeds. It was the seal of the Draconian Empire, the largest and most powerful empire in the known galaxy. You're not a cargo hauler, Jake whispered. No. I am Emperor Vex Thor, ruler of the Draconian Empire. And you, Jake Martinez, have taught me more about leadership in a few weeks than I learned in decades of ruling. Jake's mind raced. The dragon he had been serving coffee to was an emperor. The friend he had laughed and talked with was one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. I don't understand. Why? Why come here disguised? Why spend time in my shop? Because I was drowning, Vex Thor said. Drowning in responsibility and duty and the weight of an empire. I needed to escape. I needed to be just Vex for a while. Not the emperor. Not the ruler. Just myself. And I never knew. Exactly. That is why it mattered so much. You saw me as a person. You offered friendship without wanting anything in return. Do you know how rare that is? How precious. Jake stood up slowly. His legs felt weak. What happens now? Now I do what you have inspired me to do. I remember that power without purpose is meaningless. That leadership means protecting those who cannot protect themselves. The Emperor moved toward the door. Thank you, Jake, For the coffee. For the friendship. For reminding me who I should be. Wait, what are you going to do? What a true leader should do. What you would do if you had the power. Vex Thor looked back. You said one human with a coffee shop cannot stop a military force. But an emperor can. The door opened. Standing outside was a group of beings in military uniforms. They wore the same seal that was on Vex Thor's chest. Your Majesty, one of them said. Everything is prepared. Jake followed them out into the corridor. More guards appeared. They moved through the station with clear purpose. Other aliens saw them and immediately moved aside. Whispers spread like fire. The Emperor is here. Emperor Vex Thor is on the station. They reached the main plaza. Vex Thor stepped forward and raised one clawed hand. Suddenly, every screen on the station activated. Every display, every monitor, every personal device, all showed the same thing. The Imperial Seal of the Draconian Empire. Then Vex's Thor's face appeared on every screen. I am Emperor Vex Thor of the Draconian Empire. I speak now to the Krylon Confederation, and to all beings on this station. His voice carried authority. Jake had heard Vex speak many times, but never like this. This was the voice of someone who commanded fleets and ruled worlds. I have been present on this station for several weeks. I have walked among you. I have observed and learned, and I have seen courage in unexpected places. The plaza was filling with people. Aliens of every species stopped to watch and listen. The Krylon demand refugees be surrendered. They threaten violence against innocents. They believe that might makes right, and that fear is an acceptable tool of government. Vex Thor's golden eyes seemed to burn. I am here to tell the Krylon Confederation that they are wrong. The beings they seek are now under the protection of the Draconian Empire. Any action against them is an action against me. Any violence against this station is an act of war against my people. Jake watched in awe. The Emperor continued speaking. I make this decision not as a political maneuver, not as strategy or tactics. I do it because I have learned from a human. A simple man who runs a coffee shop and asks nothing in return for his kindness. He reminded me that power exists to protect. That leadership means standing up for those who cannot stand for themselves. That sometimes, the most important thing we can do is help someone in need, regardless of the cost. The Emperor looked directly at the camera. To the families hiding in fear, you are safe. To those who would threaten them, you face the full might of my empire. And to one human, who showed an emperor what friendship truly means, thank you. The screens went dark. Jake stood frozen. Everyone in the plaza was staring at him. They had heard the emperor's words. They knew he was talking about Jake. Vex Thor turned to him. I hope you do not mind that I mentioned you. You. The emperor. Jake could not form words. I am still Vex, the emperor said gently. Still your friend. But now you know what I truly am. Does it change things between us? Jake thought about the question Vex had asked weeks ago. If you knew who I truly was, would it change things between us? He took a deep breath. You're still you. You still like your coffee strong with 1 sugar. You still prefer the corner booth. You still need someone to talk to without all the weight of responsibility. Jake smiled shakily. So no, I guess it doesn't change things, though I might charge you more for coffee from now on. Emperor rates. Vex Thor laughed. That same deep rumbling sound Jake had heard before. Relief showed in his golden eyes. Come, the Emperor said. There is much to do, and I would like my friend beside me as I do it. The next hours passed in a blur. Guards escorted Jake to a secure section of the station. Commander Zex, the stern reptilian who served as Vex's Thor's chief advisor, explained that Jake needed protection. The entire galaxy now knew about the human who befriended their emperor. Jake sat in a comfortable room watching news feeds. The story was everywhere. Every channel. Every network. Footage of the emperor's speech played on repeat. Analysts discussed what it meant. Reporters tried to find out more about Jake Martinez and his coffee shop. The Krylon ships retreated within hours. They left without firing a single shot. Facing the Draconian Empire's full military might was something no rational government would risk. The refugees were moved to secure locations. Medical care and supplies were provided. The Emperor personally guaranteed their safety and promised to help them relocate to peaceful worlds. Kyle Foster resigned as station administrator. The embarrassment of an emperor having to intervene in his crisis was too much. A new administrator was appointed. Someone with actual courage and conviction. Through it all, Jake felt disconnected from reality. Yesterday, he was a coffee shop owner. Today, he was at the center of a galactic event. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Commander Zex entered. "The Emperor requests your presence, if you are ready." Jake followed the commander through corridors he had never seen before. They led to a large conference room. Inside, Vexthor stood at the head of a long table. Around him sat various advisors and officials. They all wore the Imperial seal. When Jake entered, several advisors looked at him with curiosity. A few seemed hostile. Jake felt very small and very human. "Jake," Vexthor said warmly, "please, sit beside me." Jake took the offered seat. The advisors whispered among themselves. The Emperor addressed the room. "This human showed me kindness when I was disguised as a common cargo hauler. He asked for nothing, expected nothing. His friendship was genuine because he did not know my true identity. That friendship has reminded me of crucial truths I had lost sight of." An older female dragon with blue scales spoke up. "Your Majesty, we understand the personal significance of this friendship, but publicly crediting a human for imperial policy may send confusing messages to the galaxy." "What message does it send?" Vexthor asked calmly. "That humanity, a young and inexperienced species, somehow influences the Draconian Empire. Other races will see this as weakness." Jake felt uncomfortable. He wanted to leave, to go back to his simple life. But Vexthor placed a hand on his shoulder. "Let me tell you what I learned from this human," the Emperor said. "I learned that true strength is not domination. It is protection. I learned that wisdom is not about age or experience. It is about seeing clearly what matters." Jake showed me that power exists to serve, not to control. Another advisor, a warrior with scars across his face, spoke. "These are noble sentiments, Your Majesty. But how does this change imperial policy?" "It changes everything," Vexthor replied. "For too long, our empire has focused on expansion and control. We have measured success by how many worlds we rule, how many species bow to us. But what have we built? Fear and resentment. Obedience but not loyalty." The Emperor stood and walked around the table. "Jake runs a small coffee shop. He has no army, no wealth, no advanced technology. Yet beings come to his shop and leave happier than when they arrived. Why? Because he offers something we have forgotten to value. Connection. Kindness. A moment of peace in a difficult universe. You propose changing imperial policy based on a coffee shop?" The blue dragon looked skeptical. "I propose changing imperial policy based on what that coffee shop represents. Human culture has something we need. They see beings as individuals, not just as subjects or resources. They value relationships and community. They understand that taking care of each other makes everyone stronger." Jake finally found his voice. "I'm not sure I represent all of humanity. I'm just one person." "But you represent a philosophy," Vexthor said. "One that humanity seems to embrace more naturally than older species. You have not yet learned to be cynical. You still believe in simple goodness." Commander Zex spoke. "Your Majesty, what specifically do you propose?" "First, a formal alliance with human territories, not as subjects, but as equals. Second, a new focus on what we provide to worlds under our protection, not just what they provide to us. Third, cultural exchange programs. Let humans teach other species about their approach to community and connection." The advisors looked shocked. "An alliance with humanity as equals?" Cultural exchange programs? This was unprecedented. The galaxy will mock us, the warrior said. They will say the mighty draconian empire is taking lessons from newcomers. Let them mock, Vex Thor replied. I would rather be mocked and effective than feared and hollow. Jake, do you have anything to say? Jake looked around the table at all the powerful beings staring at him. I don't know much about running empires or galactic politics, but I do know about people. Or beings, I guess. Everyone wants the same basic things. Safety, respect, someone who cares about them. It doesn't matter if you're human or dragon or any other species. Those needs are universal. He paused, gathering courage. Where I come from, there's an idea that a society should be judged by how it treats its weakest members. Not its strongest or richest, but those who need the most help. If an empire is truly great, it should be great for everyone in it, not just those at the top. The room was silent. Then the blue dragon spoke again, her tone softer. The human speaks wisdom beyond his years. He speaks human wisdom, Vex Thor corrected. Which is what we need to learn. Over the next hours, they discussed specifics. Jake mostly listened, overwhelmed by the scale of what was being planned. The Emperor wanted to transform how his empire operated. He wanted to make compassion and care as important as military strength. When the meeting finally ended, Vex Thor asked Jake to walk with him. They left the advisors behind and moved to a private observation deck. Through the large window, stars filled the view. You are very quiet, the Emperor said. This is a lot to process. Yesterday I was worried about coffee supplies. Today we're talking about changing galactic culture. I apologize for putting this weight on you. You did not ask for any of this. Jake looked at his friend. Can I ask you something? Anything. Why does my opinion matter so much? I'm nobody important. Just a guy with a coffee shop. Vex Thor turned to face him fully. You showed me that importance and title are not the same as value. For weeks, you treated me as an equal. You listened to my problems. You offered friendship freely. Do you know how rare that is for someone in my position? I guess I never thought about it. Exactly. You treated me like a person because to you, that is what I am. Not an emperor. Not a powerful dragon. Just Vex, who likes coffee and needs someone to talk to. The Emperor's voice grew softer. I have thousands of advisors, millions of subjects. But I had no friends. Until you. Jake felt emotion tighten his throat. I'm still your friend. That hasn't changed. I know. And that is why your opinion matters. You see clearly because you have no agenda. You care about others because it is simply who you are. These are the qualities I need to remind myself and my empire to value. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Finally, Jake spoke. So what happens now? Do I go back to my coffee shop? Do I become some kind of advisor? That is your choice, Vex Thor said. I can offer you many positions. Ambassador. Cultural liaison. Whatever you wish. Or you can return to Corner Brew and continue doing what you do best, making coffee and building connections. What do you want me to do? I want you to be happy. I want you to do what feels right to you. Jake thought about it. All the prestigious positions being offered. The chance to influence galactic policy. The opportunity to travel to worlds he had only dreamed about. Then he thought about his coffee shop. His regular customers. The Prexians who were just starting to trust him. The quiet satisfaction of making a perfect cup of coffee. I want to go back to my shop, he said. That's where I belong. That's where I can do the most good. Vex Thor smiled. I thought you might say that. And I think it is the right choice. You will have more impact showing others how to build community than you would sitting in political meetings. Will you still visit? As often as I can, though I will need to be more careful now. The galaxy knows I value your friendship. That makes you a target for anyone who wants leverage against me. Also there's a side. Jake had not considered that. You mean people might try to hurt me to get to you? I will not allow it. You will have protection. Subtle, but effective. Commander Zex is already arranging it. 2 IM. I don't want to live surrounded by guards. You will not. But they will be nearby, always. This is not negotiable, Jake. I will not risk your safety. Jake nodded slowly. Okay. I can live with that. They talked more about practical matters. How the alliance with humanity would work. What cultural exchanges might look like. How to help other species understand the value of connection and community. Finally, Vexthor said, there will be a formal announcement tomorrow. Representatives from across the galaxy will attend. I would like you there. 4. Do I have to give a speech? No. Just stand beside me. Show the galaxy that this friendship is real and valued. The next day, Jake stood on a stage beside the Emperor. Cameras from 1,000 worlds recorded the moment. Vexthor announced the formal alliance with humanity. He spoke about the need for change in how empires operated. He talked about learning from others, regardless of their age or power, and he introduced Jake as his friend. Not his advisor. Not his consultant. His friend. The reaction across the galaxy was immediate. Some praised the Emperor's wisdom. Others mocked him for being influenced by humans. But everyone talked about it. The story spread to every corner of known space. That evening, Jake returned to Corner Brew. The shop looked the same. The tables and chairs were where he left them. The coffee machines gleamed in the light. The crystal Vex had given him still glowed softly on the counter. But something had changed. When he opened the next morning, aliens lined up outside. They wanted to see the shop where an emperor and a human became friends. They wanted to experience what Vexthor had experienced. Jake served them all with the same care and attention he always had. He made good coffee. He listened to their stories. He treated each customer as an individual, not just as another transaction. And slowly, they began to understand what the Emperor had learned. That connection mattered. That kindness had value. That seeing each other as people, not just as members of different species, made everything better. Corner Brew became more than a coffee shop. It became a symbol. A reminder that change could start in the smallest places with the simplest actions. 3 months passed. Jake watched Corner Brew transform in ways he never imagined. The small coffee shop now had 3 employees. There was Lisa, a young human woman who had come to the station looking for work. Danny, a Prixian who loved trying new drink combinations. And Korth, a quiet Thrax who had excellent memory for customer preferences. The shop was busy most days. Aliens from across the galaxy came to experience the place where an emperor and a human had formed an unlikely friendship. But Jake made sure it never lost its welcoming atmosphere. Every customer received the same attention and care, whether they were important dignitaries or station workers. The corner booth remained reserved for Vex. A small sign indicated it was for special guests only. Most beings respected this. They understood the significance. Human diplomats reported major changes across the galaxy. Doors that had been closed to humanity suddenly opened. Trade agreements were easier to negotiate. Other species showed genuine interest in human culture and philosophy. Several alien governments sent representatives to Earth to study human social structures. They wanted to understand how humans built communities and maintained connections. Universities across human space received funding to develop cultural exchange programs. The most surprising change was in the Draconian Empire itself. Emperor Vexthor implemented sweeping reforms. Military spending decreased while funding for education and social services increased. Worlds under imperial protection reported better treatment and more local autonomy. Some criticized the emperor. Traditionalists claimed he was making the empire soft. But most citizens noticed improvements in their daily lives. Crime decreased. Happiness increased. The empire became known not just for its military might but for taking care of its people. Jake read about these changes with amazement. It was hard to believe his simple friendship with Vex had contributed to galaxy-wide transformation. One evening, as Jake was closing up, the familiar figure of Commander Zex appeared at the door. The Emperor will visit tonight. the commander said. He wanted me to inform you personally. Is everything okay? Jake asked. Vex's visits had become less frequent as Imperial duties increased. Everything is well. He simply misses his friend. An hour later, Vex's Thor entered Corner Brew. He wore his full Imperial regalia, but moved to the corner booth with obvious relief. Jake brought over 2 mugs of coffee and sat down. Long day? Long month, Vex Thor replied. He took a sip and smiled. But this makes it better. I've been reading about the reforms. Sounds like you've been busy. The changes are significant. Not everyone approves. Do you approve? That's what matters. The Emperor looked at his friend. I do. For the first time in years, I feel like I am leading with purpose. Not just maintaining power. The Empire is becoming something I can be proud of. That's good to hear. They talked about various topics. Vex shared stories about diplomatic meetings and policy debates. Jake told him about new customers and funny incidents at the shop. It was comfortable and familiar. After a while, Vex Thor said, I have a request. Sure, what do you need? In 2 weeks, I am hosting a gathering of galactic leaders. Representatives from over 50 governments will attend. I want them to experience what I experienced. I want you to cater the event. Jake nearly dropped his coffee. You want me to serve coffee to galactic leaders? Not just coffee. The entire experience. Your shop's atmosphere. Your approach to hospitality. I want them to see what made such an impact on me. I don't know if I can do that. I mean, these are important people. What if I mess up? You will not mess up. You will be yourself. That is exactly what they need to see. Jake thought about it. The idea was terrifying. But it was also an opportunity to show more leaders what humanity could offer. Okay, he said finally. I'll do it. But I'm bringing my team. Lisa, Danny, and Korth. This isn't just about me. It's about what we've built together. Perfect, Vex Thor said. That is exactly the right approach. The next 2 weeks were busy. Jake and his team prepared carefully. They practiced serving routines. They discussed how to handle different species' needs. They planned a menu that would appeal to varied tastes. Lisa was excited. This is incredible. We're going to serve the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Danny was nervous. What if they don't like our drinks? Then we'll make adjustments, Jake said. Remember, we treat them the same as any customer. With respect and care. They're just people who happen to have important jobs. Korth, who rarely spoke much, added his thoughts. Jake taught us that every being deserves dignity. That does not change based on their position. The day of the gathering arrived. Jake and his team were transported to the Imperial flagship. The ship was enormous, filled with technology and power, but the room where the gathering would take place had been transformed. Vex Thor had recreated the atmosphere of Corner Brew. Similar tables and chairs, soft lighting, even a viewport showing stars. In the center, a full coffee bar had been installed. You did all this? Jake asked in amazement. I want them to experience what you created, Vex Thor explained. The setting matters. The atmosphere matters. These things help beings relax and connect. Leaders began arriving. Jake recognized faces from news feeds. The Chancellor of the Ventaxian Collective. The High Arbiter of the Andoran Council. The Supreme Administrator of the Kelvin Union. Beings who shaped the destiny of trillions. They looked uncomfortable at first. Many were used to formal ceremonies and strict protocols. This casual atmosphere confused them. Jake approached the first group with a smile. Welcome. Please, sit anywhere you like. I'll bring drinks around shortly. If anyone has dietary restrictions or preferences, just let me know. He moved through the room with natural ease. Lisa took orders and chatted with guests. Danny prepared drinks with careful attention. Korth remembered every preference after hearing it once. Slowly, the atmosphere changed. The leaders began to relax. They stopped standing on ceremony. Conversations became genuine, instead of political. A tall blue Ventaxian chancellor sat at a table with a small Prexian trade minister. Normally, such different species would maintain careful distance. But over coffee, they discovered shared interests and concerns. The High Arbiter, known for his stern demeanor, actually laughed at something Lisa said. Other leaders noticed and seemed surprised. Jake brought coffee to a group discussing territorial disputes. "Mind if I make a suggestion?" he asked. They looked startled that a human server would speak up. But one leader gestured for him to continue. "Where I come from, we have a saying. Problems seem smaller when you're not looking at them across a conference table. Sometimes a casual conversation over coffee solves things that formal negotiations cannot." The leaders looked at each other. Then one smiled. "The human has a point. Perhaps we should discuss this more casually." The evening continued. Jake watched as beings who normally dealt with each other through strict diplomatic channels had genuine conversations. They shared concerns about their citizens. They talked about challenges they faced. They found common ground. Vexthor moved through the room, observing. At one point, he stood beside Jake. "Do you see what is happening?" the Emperor asked quietly. "They're connecting," Jake said. "Really connecting. Not just doing diplomatic business." "Exactly. This is what I wanted them to experience. What you taught me. That seeing each other as individuals makes everything else easier." Near the end of the evening, Vexthor called for everyone's attention. "Thank you all for coming. I know this gathering was unusual, less formal than what you are accustomed to, but I hope it has been valuable." The leaders nodded. Several spoke up about how much they had enjoyed it. "This human and his team showed you something important tonight," Vexthor continued. "They showed you what their species does naturally. They create spaces where beings can connect. They treat everyone with equal dignity. They understand that before we are leaders or diplomats, we are individuals with the same basic needs." He gestured to Jake. Jake Martinez runs a small coffee shop on a trade station. He has no military, no vast wealth, no political power. Yet he changed my perspective and through that, influenced imperial policy. How? By simply being kind. By treating me as a person, not a title. The room was silent, everyone listening. "I propose that we learn from humanity. Not because they are superior, but because they offer a perspective we have lost. They remind us that strength and compassion are not opposites. That connection matters as much as conquest. That taking care of each other is not weakness, but the foundation of true civilization." The Chancellor of the Ventaxian Collective stood. "I came here skeptical. I thought this was a waste of time. But tonight, I had the first genuine conversation I have had with the Kelvin Supreme Administrator in 5 years. Over coffee. In a casual setting. We solved a trade dispute that has been stalled for months. Others shared similar experiences. Connections made. Problems discussed honestly. Understanding reached. Perhaps the young species has something to teach us after all," the High Arbiter said. As the gathering ended, several leaders approached Jake personally. They thanked him. They asked questions about human philosophy and culture. Some requested that he visit their worlds to help develop similar gathering spaces. Jake was overwhelmed but gracious. He gave each leader his time and attention, just as he would any customer at his shop. Later, as the team prepared to return to Meridian Point, Vexthor pulled Jake aside. "You have done something remarkable tonight. You have shown the galaxy's most powerful beings that there is a better way. I just served coffee and talked to people. You did much more than that. You demonstrated a truth that many had forgotten, that we are all more alike than different. That kindness is not a human trait, but a universal one that we all need to remember." "What happens now?" Jake asked. "Now the real work begins. Several governments want to establish cultural exchange programs with humanity. They want to learn more about your approach to community and connection. Earth will become more important in galactic affairs, not because of military might, but because of what humanity represents. That's a lot of pressure on one species. You will handle it well. Humans seem to do best when helping others." the Emperor smiled. "And you will always have friends in the Empire." Jake returned to Meridian Point and Corner Brew. The shop continued to thrive. More aliens visited every day. But Jake made sure the core mission remained the same. It was a place where beings could relax and connect, where everyone was treated with dignity and respect. He received offers to expand, to open branches across the galaxy, to franchise the concept. He turned them all down. Corner Brew was special because it was personal and authentic. Making it a business empire would destroy what made it valuable. Instead, Jake helped others learn to create their own gathering spaces. He answered questions from beings across the galaxy. He shared his philosophy freely. Soon, similar places began appearing on other stations and worlds. Places where beings could come together without the weight of politics and hierarchy. Vexthor visited when he could. Sometimes weeks passed between visits, but he always returned to his corner booth. They would drink coffee and talk about everything and nothing. Just two friends sharing time together. One evening, 6 months after the gathering, a new alien entered the shop. She looked nervous and alone. She was a species Jake had never seen before. Tall and thin, with skin that seemed to shimmer. Jake approached with his usual friendly smile. "Welcome to Corner Brew. First time here?" "Yes," she said softly. "I just arrived at the station. I do not know anyone. I saw your shop and thought perhaps." "You thought right," Jake said warmly. "Have a seat anywhere you like. Coffee is on the house for first-time visitors. And you're not alone anymore. You've got friends here." She looked grateful and moved to a table by the window. From his corner booth, Vexthor watched and smiled. This was what Jake did best. Making connections. Offering kindness. Helping beings feel less alone in a vast galaxy. "Another life changed," the Emperor said quietly. "That's the hope," Jake replied. "One person at a time. One cup of coffee at a time." Across the galaxy, the ripple effects continued. Reforms implemented. Connections made. Understanding grew between species. It would take years to fully transform galactic culture. Maybe generations, but the change had begun. And it started in a small coffee shop on a trade station. Started with a lonely human who offered a cup of coffee to a lonely dragon. Two beings who found friendship in an unlikely place and showed the galaxy that kindness could change everything. Jake closed up the shop that night feeling content. He had not set out to change the galaxy. He had just wanted to run a good coffee shop and connect with others. But sometimes, the smallest actions had the biggest impact. As he turned off the lights, he looked at the glowing crystal Vex had given him months ago. It still shone softly, a reminder of friendship and the power of simple kindness. Tomorrow he would open again. More beings would come. More connections would form. More lives would be touched in small but meaningful ways. It was not a grand destiny. It was better than that. It was purposeful. Authentic. Real. It was exactly what the galaxy needed. And it all began because one human man bought a lonely alien dragon a cup of coffee.